Daja, how the dissertation that I am going to be summarizing today is what is the relationship between the I Ching, the Classic of Change, and Chinese Medicine by Alex Scrimmager. The front matter for the dissertation I am summarizing consisted of the title page, which included an interesting illustration, the author's acknowledgments, the table of contents, and a list of illustrations. The title of this dissertation is What is the Relationship Between the I Ching, the Classic of Change, and Chinese Medicine? Finding this dissertation with this title felt like spotting an oasis in the distance after being lost in a desert of dissertation searching. The illustration on the title page was intriguing and instantly inspired a desire for further investigation into the contents of this dissertation. Upon further investigation and reaching the table of contents, the titles to the three main chapters elicited a similar desire for further investigation. Chapter 1 being Returning to the Source, Chapter 2 The Foundations, Chapter 3 I Ching Applications. Also noted was the author's use of I Ching as opposed to I Ching. Introduction. In the introduction, the author lays out the structure of how he will present his information in the following chapters. He superficially draws broad connections between the I Ching and Chinese medicine, building the framework for what the rest of his dissertation will fill in. He comments on the similar atmosphere of ambiguity that exists within the field of study within Chinese medicine and the I Ching, and it is this ambiguity that he is hoping to address and investigate within the following pages. The author also openly explains that he believes the task of explaining the relationship between Chinese medicine and the I Ching, saying that it lies beyond the scope of his own dissertation and what he deems as a lifelong study. To avoid getting lost in the complexities of both the I Ching and Chinese medicine, his focus will be in tracing it back on a historical timeline, in which he will then examine the interplay and influences of the I Ching upon Chinese medicine into the present-day interplay that continues between the two. The method. The method for this dissertation is a literary review in which the author felt this was the most suitable and practical method for this subject. He briefly comments on the main sources he used, composed of primarily books, internet resources, and discussion with experts of the field. He mentions that a significant limitation in his research was the fact that he was limited to English resources, and that of the 200 plus I Ching works that exist, in which I assume he is speaking only to English works, many of these are the I Ching through a specific lens, for example, the I Ching and Feng Shui. The author further comments that even the literary works that do specifically investigate the relationship of the I Ching and Chinese medicine still are unable to provide a complete picture of this topic. He further elaborates on the general nature of the I Ching, creating its own limitations in research by way of being something that does not lend itself to being adequately captured by words and contained within a book or a paper, but being more of something that is alive and forever changing itself. The author provides a short but insightful overview of the impacts of history upon the relationship between the I Ching and Chinese medicine. From the ban of Chinese medicine in China in the 1930s to the standardization of Chinese medicine in China in the 1950s, which contributed to the air of secrecy that surrounded the I Ching, especially in respect to medicine and its practice. According to the author, I Ching and its practices were considered sacred and therefore selectively shared, making them even more inaccessible. Even the information which is available today cannot just be taken for straight face value and to be considered truly scholarly. It must be seen with an educated and well-rounded background and perception. Chapter 1: Returning to the Source. The author traces the roots of both the I Ching, originally titled the Zhou-yi, and of Chinese medicine back to the believed point of origin. The point of origin of the I Ching is shrouded in mystery and myth, and there is little hard evidence that exists or has been uncovered up to this point in time, proving the actual origin of the text. Despite its mythical beginnings, the author states with certainty that the essence of the I Ching derives from an observation of nature and its patterns of change and transformation. The contextual dependent nature of interpretation of the I Ching is of extreme importance when conducting research in this area. Differentiating between the interpretations from the interpreter while meanwhile maintaining the integrity of the original content, assuming that's possible. From the I Ching inspired many other texts to be written which spoke to the relationships between mind and body and would ultimately become concepts Chinese medicine would grow out of. The I Ching began as a divination text and matured into a text that explained the whole working order and nature of the universe. Chapter 2: The Foundations. The author starts drawing more in-depth connections here between the I Ching and the foundational theories of yin-yang theory and five-element theory in relation to Chinese medicine. It shows how the same philosophy and concepts are inherent in both the I Ching and Chinese medicine. The author elucidates the idea of the macrocosm being an extension of the microcosm, and illustrates with specific examples how these concepts are presented within the I Ching and Chinese medicine. In this chapter, the author also starts to explain the deeper meanings in the numerology present within the I Ching and subsequently Chinese medical theory. The author speaks of the fact that the laws which govern our external world are the same laws that govern our internal world, and that the I Ching presents us with a tool to effectively navigate amongst within these laws, Chinese medicine being one extension of this tool. Also in this chapter, the author again emphasizes the fact that both the I Ching and Chinese medicine take the physical manifestation of a thing and deduce it into numerology, then correlating it to internal manifestations and patterns, which again are patterned after nature. The author suggests that based on the idea of observation, which are at the roots of the I Ching, he believes that the channel theory, being more superficial, preceded organ theory, which is an example of the application of the concept of understanding the external to understand the internal. The author then introduces concepts of the web of connections between hexagrams, their relationship with parts of the body, acupuncture points, as well as the foundational concepts of heaven, man, and earth. The pattern of creation shown in the I Ching in creating different hexagrams is replicated within the human body and can therefore be applied in Chinese medicine. The author highlights the importance of astrological influences on the physical functioning of not only the body and its parts, but also of the acupuncture points themselves, and further comments how the history and differing schools of thought have taken us away from this crucial foundational understanding in Chinese medicine practice today. Chapter 3: I Ching Applications. Through a thorough understanding of the I Ching, the Chinese medical practitioner can apply the same principles to achieve health within the human body. In this section, the author again brings it back to the application of the foundational concepts of recognizing the microcosm in the macrocosm and vice versa, and their interdependent nature in achieving balance in either one or the other. The author here emphasizes with extreme importance that achieving a true comprehension of that which is encompassed in the I Ching must in large part be experiential, for only a small portion can be transmitted through words, and that a majority of true transmission is person to person. Through first recognizing the 8 trigrams externally leads to recognizing them internally, leads to engaging them directly to effect change. The conclusion. The I Ching is the map to understanding the universe. It outlines the patterns in each thing being inherently the same and functioning under the same laws. Chinese medicine is rooted in the interplay of these 64 dynamics. The effective use of an understanding of the concepts held within the I Ching are neither solely based on understanding just the history, but lies just as much in the understanding of how to incorporate the history with changes of current times into yet another applicable manifestation.